Hey, you guys, welcome back to the podcast. So, I just wanted to start really quickly with something that is personal and is something that we are currently struggling through, just as a way to kind of show you I'm human. We kind of go through things at times too, but also just maybe if you guys have answers to this or can help me, I would greatly appreciate it because I would love to connect, right? More connection this year. But one of the things that I've noticed in the last probably 2 months, and I think this is I'm hearing this a lot more from a lot of people, but I don't know if you guys are noticing a diet trend that's happening where more and more people are having allergies and intolerances to things that they've been eating for many, many years. And my kids are one of those people that are just all of a sudden, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure, yes, we've talked about their stomachs have been hurting them quite a bit for the last couple of years. But I feel like it's just come to a head in the last 2 months. And I'm like, what is it? What is going on with all of my kids at the same time? My oldest is now going gluten free, and that is a whole journey because she loves her bread and she loves her pasta. So changing over to gluten free has been difficult to say the least. And yeah, like it just buying tons of different things to try and fill that gap a little bit. It's been very, very difficult. And then I have two other kids with in the last probably 2 weeks have really decided and really been aware that milk does not sit very well with them. Dairy doesn't sit very well with them. And so they are also going, dairy free or lactose free or whatever you want to say it. I still don't even know exactly what the term is. I'm sure there's a difference between lactose and dairy. I don't know, but I'm still trying to figure this all out. But man, I was just sitting with my husband at lunch and just being like, okay, what do we do? Because it's hard enough just having everybody be on the same kind of diet. And then when you have others that are like two different things, oh my gosh, it's so difficult. And so that's me being throwing a little bit of a pity party for myself. But it's very curious to me that all of a sudden these things are kind of hitting us. And what is it? What is it that's causing people to be gluten intolerant and dairy intolerant and I don't know, just crazy, crazy stuff. So if you have any ideas or any products that you recommend, I am all ears. I need tried and true things that people like about it if you have found things that work. So would love to hear from you. But today I want to talk to you guys about something around the word connection. If you notice, I bring it up a lot. And actually, if you're on YouTube, you'll see I have this little picture. I don't know if it's backwards. My daughter actually created this for me. The beginning of the year, she actually does that for me every year. She's an amazing artist and she made connection for me. I actually got a necklace too that has connection on it. I got it from Shein. If you guys are familiar with Shein, it's a little dicey here and there sometimes, but I found the word connection and I had it put on a necklace. So it's kind of cool because people ask me questions about it. So I'm able to talk about it a little bit more. But whenever I decide on a word for my year, because I really find that's more powerful than goals, because goals just become to-dos without an intention. So I have goals, but I set my intention first that kind of gives me that guide. And so my intention is to really have more connection. And so I sit down and I let myself brainstorm, what does that actually mean? What does it look like? And so I kind of pair out, the different areas of my life, different pillars. And it really is really powerful for me to kind of flesh that out. And if that's something that you guys are curious, we're actually doing that in the workshop tomorrow. Yeah, it's happening tomorrow, which is it's not too late. So you can totally sign up to join us. It's tomorrow at 9 o'clock in the morning. We're going to be going through how to break this down. What does it look like to have an intention versus a goal and how it can really, really benefit you in 2024. So go sign up for that. But as I was breaking down this word a little bit more, one of the areas that I really wanted to focus on was connection in with myself. That's a big one, but also helping my young woman and my kids with connection. And so, and there's just been a lot of disconnect lately. I've done a couple podcasts on it with the lack of friendships and just feeling like they, just don't fit in. And I hear the same kind of narrative happening within my young woman. And so it's just this like thing that's permeating in these different areas of my life. And so I've really been pondering on what is the gap, what's creating this gap. And not that I can control what everybody else's experiences are, but I feel like as a leader, as a mom, it's something I want to ponder on with curiosity, not necessarily trying to fix anything, but with curiosity of like, how can I better serve them? How can I better guide them and lead them? And help them find ways that they are still in control of their lives. Because I find for a lot of them, the areas that they're focusing on is leading them to being completely out of control. And we're going to kind of dive into this a little bit. But I guess the idea that I came up with is what is the difference? Because this is where I find people get stuck is what is the difference then between fitting in and belonging? And this is a very interesting conversation to kind of play with. And I just want you guys to feel this for yourself. If you think about fitting in somewhere. And we all do this. It's not like we're saying you need to only, fit into one category or another, but in the times in your life where you tried to fit in, first off, what did it feel like? And I notice for myself when I think about fitting in, I feel it totally, it's all inside, right? But it's like this needy heaviness, and it doesn't feel the greatest. It's this graspy energy, right? And I find that the focus is really external. It's trying to fit in with the jeans, it's trying to fit in with the shoes, it's trying to fit in with the hairstyle, or Taylor Swifties, right? Being a Swiftie, I have to fit in with everybody else, even though that might not fit with me. So it's like this trying to prove yourself energy, really. And then when you think about belonging, there's just this breath of fresh air that happens, right? And to me, that's the peace, that's the confidence, that's the alignment. And I notice when you're belonging, yeah, you might belong to something bigger, but it's more of this internal place where you have a grounding, a foundation that is solid, that doesn't need to look outside of you in order to feel that peace, that sense of connection. Because that's ultimately what we're looking for, is connection, right? It's just the source that it's coming from. So many people, and I think we are kind of taught this as we are growing up, right? That you need to fit in, right? You need to fit in to have friends. And so to get that connection, we do what we can to be more like our friends. You see those groups of friends that they all look alike, right? So they're all trying to fit in. But it becomes this performance piece of constantly having to change, because if we're constantly trying to adapt to everybody else, we lose ourselves. We betray ourselves in the process. We don't even know who we are in that process. And so it's navigating this and trying to figure out how you belong, not from a place of needing to get validation or approval from anybody else. And I'm not saying it's an easy thing to do. It's a quest that I think is lifetime, right? If we think about like trying to belong, it's a lifetime quest, because it does require us to do the internal work. It requires us to be okay with ourselves, to belong to ourselves. When I think about with my young women, one of the things that we hear a lot, especially in our church, is that we want to belong, right? We belong to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. We want to belong to, just want to belong. We actually, in Young Women's, we have emblems of belonging, so we wear these things to kind of show us that we belong to something bigger. We belong to our Heavenly Father. We are a daughter of God. We say these things, and yet it sometimes can be a quandary of like, well, what does that actually mean? And what is the how behind that? And so people get lost in that, and they kind of slip back into trying to fit in because they don't understand that difference. And so it's really important for us to take a step back and to really slow things down. And I think it's uncomfortable. I was actually talking to one of my clients recently about this, and she was mentioning to me that she really wants to fit in with this new group of people that she is around, and that she's so worried that if she doesn't wear a certain thing, or she doesn't dress a certain way, or she doesn't say yes to everything, that they are going to say something about her. They're going to judge her in some way. And because of that, we actually, what she ends up doing is becoming a chameleon, changing based off of the environment, maybe not necessarily wearing the clothes she would normally want to, or not laughing in the way that she normally would want to. And so she's losing herself in the process because she's trying so desperately to fit in because she wants to belong. So many of us kind of get lost in that belonging journey, thinking that if we get judged, that's a bad thing. And I just want to play around with this. Is what if being judged is not a problem at all? And I know I'm saying this and I have a visceral reaction to this too. Like, no, being judged is not a good thing. It doesn't feel very good. But really, if you think about what judgment is, it's just somebody else's perceptions. And being judged is okay because they're just judging me through their lens. They're not judging me. They're judging me through their lens. They're judging me through the stories and the way they were brought up. And so if they don't like me, that has nothing to do with me. It has everything to do with them. And I know this is easier said than done, especially when I'm talking to my kids and I try and say this. They're like, no, I really want to fit in with them. I'm like, I get it. I don't want to be judged. I get it. But it really is like slowing down with this and saying like, why are we so afraid to be judged? Because that at the core, right, is we don't want to be alone. That is it. We don't want to be alone. Loneliness, alone, it doesn't feel very good. It feels like this emptiness. But if you can start to make the shift over to belonging, then you're no longer afraid to be alone, because you can be alone with yourself and know that you're whole and complete. And I know this sounds kind of out there a little bit. Even as I'm saying this, I'm like, okay, it makes sense. I hate those podcasts that say those types of things. And you're like, uh-huh, I get that on an intellectual basis, but what does that mean? But it's just, I think it is playing around with this a little bit more of like understanding you can be you and your people are going to find you. You are going to belong exactly where you need to belong. You can belong standing all by yourself on a mountaintop because you are in alignment with who you are. So many of us are putting on a performance right now. We are performance-based people. And again, I don't think we're never that place. And I don't think we should never want to be in that place. I think there's a time and a place for it. But it's learning that that is coming at a cost to you losing yourself. And so it's learning to stand on our own and be okay to be judged. One of the things that I've thought about recently this year is, stepping more into what is true for me. And I kind of spoke about this a couple of weeks ago on the podcast of just like, there's a lot of gaps in the coaching industry. And because I wanted to fit in, I wanted people to accept me, right? I think that's a big one too, is I wanted to be accepted by other coaches and by other people in the coaching world. I didn't want to ruffle feathers and I wanted to dress a certain way. I mean, I can't even tell you the amount of retreats and activities that I would go to with so much fear of being judged or, just not fitting in. It's kind of like, high school all over again, right? And I would lose myself in the process and it would become so exhausting. Like I would leave those events because I was trying so hard to fit in. I would be so exhausted. Versus I went to a retreat last week and it was the first time that I allowed myself to just be me. And it felt very uncomfortable to do, but I let myself just belong, just let myself sit there. One of the things I normally do is I normally go shopping for new outfits because I need to, I need to fit in with them, right? I need to wear the in things. I need to say the right things. And this was the very first time that I did not buy a single new item and I didn't overthink it. I literally was like, what feels good for me to wear? And I was asked to facilitate an emotions part of it. And usually I overthink it. I'm like, what are they going to think? What are they going to do? All the things. And I just went into it trusting myself. And it was such a different experience. Now, I'm not saying it was easy. I'm not saying like, oh my gosh, I'm going to stay here forever. I'm human and so are you. But when I have that experience of just knowing what it feels like to belong to myself, like I'm good as I am. I don't need anybody's approval. I don't need to fit in. It's crazy the connections that were made. I can't even tell you the amount of amazing women that I was able to meet on a very quick heart-based level because I wasn't trying to get their approval. I wasn't trying to, fit in with them, say the right things. It was awesome to be able to do that. I've had that experience even at girls' camp. I actually was speaking to a couple leaders a couple weeks ago. We were talking about girls' camp. We're gearing up for it again. It's crazy. We're already in that season again. But we were joking with one of the new leaders. I'm like, yeah, I just gear up because every time at girls' camp, it's like going back to high school. You walk into the lunchroom and you're like, who do I sit with? Where do I get to sit? It's funny how that inclination, that fear of being alone and not fitting in, it doesn't go away. It's just being aware of that and reminding myself and bringing myself back to, I belong. I belong as me, who I am. And that doesn't mean I don't change and I don't want to change or that I don't maybe sometimes adapt to somebody else's needs, but I'm not doing it from a place of fear of, them not liking me. I'm like, I like me and I want to support you in your journey. I want to help you where you are at. And I think that's the difference with this. We're not swinging over to like, I don't care about you. That's not true belonging. Belonging is like, I matter and so do you. That's the difference with this. It's not coming from fear of trying to prove something. It's more like, I got me and I got myself, which is so awesome. But again, it's not very comfortable. We have to be willing for people to judge us. We have to be willing to do things that other people might be like, what are you doing? What are you wearing? What are you saying? But I have found, and I don't know if you guys have had this experience, but that truly is where you find your people. My oldest was telling me the other day, where finally this year she's starting to step into her own a little bit. I mean, I think we all have to go through that phase of trying to fit in all the time, but she's starting to step into her own a little bit. And she finally found this girl at cosmetology that she's able to be her goofy self. And oh my gosh, if you meet this girl, she is so charismatic and electric and hilarious. But she finally let herself just be her. And she has connected on a new level with this girl that she's just like, I can be me, mom. Like it's so weird for her to see that. But we want more of that, where we can say, like, I can be me exactly as I am and be accepted for that. And then the people that judge me, I'm like, you're just not my people. Move on. But I'm not afraid of them judging me anymore. I'm just like, I'm going to find my people by being me and knowing that I belong on a bigger scale than just this moment or this group of people. So one of the things I always hear from people is like, well, what's the how? Like, how do I do this? And I think there's a couple things here. We sometimes forget the basics, right? Is again, first off, I think spending some time on really knowing what it feels like to fit in or try to fit in, that graspy, heavy, because you want to start to check in with yourself and notice, oh, I'm walking into this room. I'm noticing that pressure. I'm noticing oh my gosh, the word that just totally slipped my mind. You're trying to prove yourself, right? You feel it in your body. Then you can start to call yourself out of like, oh, I'm trying to fit in here. And kind of working yourself through your thoughts and your emotions and helping yourself navigate to being more in this belonging place of like confidence, love, empathy for yourself, just like helping yourself navigate between the two. So learning those emotions, what they feel like, being able to do a gut check, you're going to probably find, and this is another thing that I've come to my awareness is when I'm not trying to fit in, my circle shrinks. It's really, really crazy. I want friends. I absolutely do. I want my people to love me, but my circle shrinks and my desire for, to have millions of friends goes away because I'm not needing to fit in anymore. I'm like, I just don't need it. So there's that. And then the second thing I think is so powerful is to be able to notice our stories and our thoughts that we have. And so journaling, doing a brain dump, I've talked about it so many times on the podcast, but it's just this power of getting it outside of our brain. I know a lot of you guys tell me, "Oh, I do it in my brain all the time. I don't need to write that down." And I just want to call you out because you cannot solve the same problem with the same brain that created it. So if you are thinking thoughts that are like, I need to fit in, I'm not as good as they are, and you're just trying to put a beautiful thought on top of it, it's not going to work. So learning to write those stories out, to look at them with fresh eyes, to be able to say, like, maybe I'm wrong about that. Not necessarily just throwing on a beautiful thought on top of it, but just more like, I could be wrong about that. Being able to see it outside of you, to become the observer of your brain is so powerful because that is what is driving you right now to try and fit in. Again, the fear of being alone. And I love to bring this back to the gospel just for a second. We belong on this inherent celestial realm. And if I could get my girls to think and understand this, I think so many things would change. We need so many more people to understand that they belong, that you don't need to try and prove yourself to anybody. Really, it's learning to step into your own. You have a heavenly Father that you belong with. You have a heavenly family that you belong with, and you don't need to prove anything. And actually, you were created to be just like you. Now, if you don't know who you are, then that is the quest. That is the journey for you to figure that out, but not from a place of trying to fit in. It's more of like, that is my quest, is to know who I am and whose I am on the deepest level. And so it becomes a fun thing of just like, okay, so what do I like? Do I like this kind of music? If I'm not trying to fit in with my friends and say I like Taylor Swift, that's a whole story. But if I tell I don't need to fit in, what kind of music do I like? And being able to question it and then be able to let yourself go on that journey to get to know yourself and belong to you, everything will change. You belong, my friend. You belong here. You belong in this world. You belong just because of who you are. Now, the habit of trying to fit in, I get it. I hear it, but it's just a habit. It does not mean anything's wrong with you. It's just noticing that habit of like, oh, there goes that habit again. I'm trying to fit in. Noticing that I am nervous about not having somebody to sit next to or not, whatever it is. It's just like, oh, there's that part of me that wants to fit in. I love you. I love you, that part of me. And then being willing to question it and then remind yourself that you belong. It may feel lonely at times. I'm not going to say that this is all roses and butterflies and rainbows and it's just easy. No, I think belonging sometimes is hard because it can be a lonely journey. But I think that's what's so powerful about this work is reminding yourself that you aren't alone ever, and that belonging can help you fill that gap a little bit. And side note, being a part of this community, my community with me, then hopefully you can see that you're not alone. All of us are black sheep, by the way. We all belong together. I love when people tell me like, I'm the black sheep of my family. Like, me too. Everybody is. So we all can be black sheeps together, but we all belong. You belong. And if you need a place to belong, then you definitely need to come tomorrow because I have a new program that is going to be opening up starting next week that is all about belonging and creating a space for you to navigate to find out who you are and all those emotions that come with it. Because loneliness doesn't feel the greatest, but the more you can build your capacity to feel it, then you don't need to try and be a chameleon with everybody. Because we want you to be you. You were created exactly the way you are for a purpose, for a meaning. It wasn't a mistake. So you belong, my friend. I love you, and I will talk to you next week.